Hi, Nick Dogan or say law. We safeguard your professional license so you can get back to business. Today's topic is going to be what is the National Practitioner Databank? So that is short answer to that is essentially it is an online depository warehouse, whatever nomenclature you prefer, where adverse actions against healthcare professionals can be acquired. Now, according to the National Practitioner Databank's website, they claim that, quote, the National Practitioner Databank is a confidential information clearinghouse created by Congress to improve healthcare quality, protect the public, and reduce healthcare fraud. Notice I rolled my eyes at protect the public because I hear that all the time from licensing entities, and I frankly get tired of the narrative. And I'll get in that, go on a little rant here in just a minute. But to get back to the claims on the National Practitioner Databank's website, they claim that it's a confidential information clearinghouse. That is partially right, partially wrong. They are under the umbrella of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Now, what makes that first portion about it being a confidential information somewhat right and somewhat wrong, let's go in the somewhat right portion of it, is the general public's not going to be able to see it. Right. So you type in John Smith, physician, Columbia, South Carolina, it's not going to pop up. And that's assuming if John Smith in Columbia, South Carolina has an adverse action against him. Let's assume that that's happened. Sorry, John. But the general public's not going to be able to see that on the National Practitioner Databank. So that leaves, well, who is going to be able to see it? Typically the people that matter if you want to make a living. And that means your potential employers, like if you're a physician and, you're trying to transition to a different hospital or you're trying to go to, an urgent care or whatever the case may be, they're going to have access to National Practitioner Databank. The other folks that are going to have access to that as well are going to be state licensing boards, professional societies, but easy for me to say, and other healthcare entities like credentialing authorities. So professional societies could be like North Carolina Medical Society, North Carolina Nurses Association, kind of things like that. They're voluntary. You don't have to be a part of them. But if you're going to go into a deep specialization on something, you're probably going to want to be a part of those societies because you get to collaborate with other people that do what you do, and you've niched down very deeply. Then you want to be able to kind of compare notes, literally compare notes with other people that do the same thing you do. And it's beneficial and it helps the public. Anytime that you have people that have a passion for something and they're willing to go to those lengths to join a voluntary society like that or organization, and want to go spend their extra time doing that to improve their profession and improve their skill set, as a professional, then that's a huge plus. And if something's on the National Practitioner Databank and say the Medical Society sees it or North Carolina Nurses Association or some other society or association sees it, they may remove that person from that organization. So that kind of leads me back into protecting the public and how sick and tired I frankly am of hearing that over and over and over again. Because yes, to give credit where credit's due when it comes to a lot of this stuff, if you have somebody doing something super egregious, they don't need to be doing their profession. If you've got, they had I believe it was a nurse over in Winston-Salem, one of the hospitals over there back in, I believe it was 2019, 2021, somewhere around there, that was killing people. Obviously, it doesn't need to be a nurse, it needs to be locked up, which is exactly where that person has been. They've been locked up. We have a criminal justice system that's worked its way through there. During the course of that individual is not allowed to be a nurse. Hopefully they'll never be a nurse again. But hopefully they'll be sitting in jail for a long, long time. So we do have a lot of systems in place in this country, criminal justice system being one, civil system being another, where they do protect the public. And that one is an extreme example. And so going with that extreme example, yes, I guess the nursing board did protect the public there, but was that person ever going to be able to practice nursing with their murder charges on their, murder convictions in their record? No, absolutely not. So this idea that, everybody's protecting the public like we're children, it gets on my nerves a good bit, and for good reason, because That's spouted out if someone makes an honest mistake. You make an honest charting error, and it's like, well, we got to give you a reprimand because we're protecting the public. Or something silly, and it's public reprimand or something considered discipline, and it gets reported National Practitioner Databank. It's like, well, we're protecting the public. Are you really? When everybody gets tired of being nickeled and dimed, and everybody looking over their shoulder over every little thing, and you end up with, for example, a massive shortage of nurses in this state. So, end of my rant there. So we'll get on to what else goes on in the National Practitioner Databank. So the professions, as I alluded to a moment ago, physicians are reported National Practitioner Databank, nurses as well, dentists, physician assistants, physical therapists are on there, also occupational therapists, anybody that is in the healthcare industry that has a license can be reported National Practitioner Databank. And I mentioned adverse actions. And I talked a little bit about, obviously, if somebody has some sort of administrative action against them through a licensing entity, that's obviously going to be reported National Practitioner Databank. But also medical malpractice payments by healthcare providers. So if somebody's sued civilly, and a lot of times, if you're a physician or if you're even a nurse and a nurse is sued or a physician sued, sometimes the licensee doesn't even know that the lawsuit's been settled, and the next thing they know, they're reported over the National Practitioner Databank as a result. That happens. I was surprised to hear that as well, but unfortunately, that does happen. So another thing that a lot of people might not know that gets reported over National Practitioner Databank, or know that you might even need to have as a healthcare professional, is clinical privileges for practitioners on military installations. And that can be a hospital, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a hospital. So I'm from Panama City Beach in Florida, and there is a coastal system station, which is a very small, specialized Navy base down there where they do, my understanding, they do some limited special forces training, very specialized stuff. And say, for example, a physician needs to be out there just in case something goes wrong. Well, they've got clinical privileges down at that particular base and through the Navy military to be able to go down there and do that. And let's say something pops up, they're in the middle of a contract, and then something pops up on National Practitioner Databank. The Navy catches wind of it. They do have a process. So you go through DHA. Through that process, they will decide whether or not your privileges are going to be revoked. If you're already on the National Practitioner Databank, that's going to give them pretty good cause to implement some sort of restrictions on that. So it can be a detriment, full stop, to getting quality employment or employment at all. And again, it depends on the severity of the allegations and what pops up as the adverse action. On the flip side to my example just a moment ago, if that physician is on that military base and there is something that happens that would be a ethics violation, and the privileging authority decides to revoke privileges or suspend privileges or something along those lines, and it's considered an adverse action, then that is reported over to the National Practitioner Databank. So it cuts both ways. So the military installation is going to be able to see what's on the National Practitioner Databank, and if there is a confirmed adverse action, a confirmed violation of their policies or other ethics violations, then they can actually restrict the privileges, and that'll be considered an adverse action and reported over to the National Practitioners Databank. So it is, like I said, basically a depository for adverse actions. Just to explain what those are, you definitely want to stay off of it. Because it does create an issue, and it's not a full stop impediment to getting a job, but as you can imagine, it does make things a little bit more difficult for people. And depending on the severity of the situation, it could end up being a full stop to getting another job in your particular chosen profession. So the positive, and this is not a huge positive, but it's at least a positive to some extent, there is a way for a licensee to upload a response to National Practitioner Databank to kind of give their side of the story. And it is a 4,000 character limit. So you can get into a pretty long narrative. You're not going to want to put in any sort of patient health information or anything along those lines. You got to be careful about that. They will flag that and take that stuff out, but you don't want to put that in there anyways for obvious reasons. But you have a 4,000 character limit, so you can get into an explanation like, "Hey, here's what really happened. This is my side of the story. This might have been left out on what was filed into the National Practitioner Databank," and that happens. We'll have situations where it's either a consent order, or if we have a hearing and we're unsuccessful, the whatever board will do their own final agency decision, and that has findings of fact, conclusions of law, and then basically the final outcome, which I always call the decretal section at the very bottom, and that lays out kind of like what the decision was, was in the penalty, and then any probationary conditions, things like that. Then that's what's uploaded. So sometimes the findings of fact are not going to be 100% accurate. They're going to be weighed in the favor of the licensing entity, or in the military's case, in the favor of the military installation that was conducting the hearing. And so you want to have an opportunity to write your own narrative in there, and that's where the 4,000 character limit comes into play for that. So I hope that was pretty useful information, and hopefully my rant didn't really turn you off too much. I apologize if it did it, but I do feel passionate about it, and I'm not really one to bite my tongue. So if you got any questions, please feel free to give us a call at 919-521-8810. But before you do that, check out the other blogs on my website, northstatelawfirm.com, also the YouTube channel, North State Law. And then only after you've looked there, if you can't find what you're looking for, you can get a free 15-minute discovery call with a member of my staff by calling 919-521-8810, or sending a text to that 919-521-8810 number. And I want to thank everybody for taking care of North Carolina out there. I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.